Good morning, Cardinals fans, and welcome into the Monday Morning Scramble, where we're here with you to just digest this 38-20 loss. We're here in studio because it's raining outside. It's Arizona, but we have rain here in September, and the Cardinals, they started out fast yesterday, but it soon fizzled out. Kyle, what went wrong? What bites after this loss?
Yeah, I think to me, the cornerback situation in the first two games was okay, even though you didn't have Patrick Peterson or Robert Alford. Those guys held up pretty well, and you thought going against Kyle Allen, a backup quarterback, you could actually take advantage and make some plays, maybe get an interception or two. Didn't happen. He really torched the Cardinals secondary, threw 4 touchdown passes, and I think the attrition may have caught up to them in that aspect, because you didn't have your 2 starting cornerbacks, and you're not going to have them for the next few weeks too. So that's something you have to figure out moving forward.
Yeah, and the defense will be the first ones to tell you that they didn't play up to par. Of course, with a backup quarterback coming in, it's always a dangerous game, right, Jody?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Kyle Allen coming home, I think he performed a lot better than most people thought that he would. But it's interesting, this league has changed so much, and as much as we all talk about, Kyler Murray coming in, I mean, young guys can come in and make a difference. Obviously, Kyle Allen doesn't have the pedigree as far as the draft pick and number 1 overall, but you're kind of relying on guys to come in and make an impact. And it's not like it was 10, 20 years ago when guys would sit and they're delivering. And that was the case. And I think, Kyle, you hit on it. We saw some holes in the secondary. You don't want to see those big plays. Overall, the team got the start that they wanted. I think everyone was excited about that. A lead in the third quarter, and it was just about the finish. I think for me, it's about putting 4 quarters together, and you just hope that it happens next week, because that's what's missing right now.
Yeah, and I think this one kind of bites a little bit more than the last couple, just because you've seen kind of the promise going from week 1 to week 2, and facing the backup quarterback, it was like, this is the week, this is the one. Expectations were high, and I think that's why it's a little bit more.
Yeah, going off that, I think this was the first week with expectations. You go into week 1 against Detroit, you really don't know what this offense will look like, how this team will come together. You saw the fight there. Week 2 in Baltimore, it's a tough road test, but still they hung in there. And then again, we've been talking all week, I think, just start fast. Cliff Kingsbury said, I'm just not even going to mention it and see if it happens. And it did. We saw them come out there that first drive and just light it up. Well, obviously after Chandler Jones' strip sack to turn it over. But we saw them come out there, and that's, just what bites, not being able to put together 4 quarters of that. But it's coming. Even
all the way through 3 quarters, like Jody was saying, they had the lead in the third. It was a 1-point game late in the third. And then Christian McCaffrey goes on that game-breaking run, it felt like, 76 yards, juked a couple defenders and was gone. And then you're down by 8, and then you throw the interception, and they score again real quick, and all of a sudden it got out of hand. But I do think you have to focus on the fact that the Cardinals were competitive in another game, and we knew this was going to be a rebuilding season, and at least they're in games. I think it didn't go well at the very end, but that shouldn't take away from the first 3 quarters and the offense still being able to move the ball with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, we knew going into this season, too, obviously with the holes on defense. I mean, you don't have this defense, 2 cover corners, the pass rush. They're not able to do what they're able to do. Once Robert Alford was out, even defensive coordinator Vance Joseph said, hey, things are going to change, and we see that. We see DJ Swearinger having to cover tight ends, and unfortunately, week after week, we're seeing them have success, and that's something also that really bites in this game, is just seeing another tight end. I think it's now 5 touchdowns in 3 games to tight ends, which is truly something that's obviously unacceptable as a defense. They know week after week that tight ends are going to be targeted.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bad matchup, obviously, if a guy's athletic, and a guy like Greg Olson's been doing it forever. So, I mean, I know we talked about that with Andrews last week, but that's why tight ends, especially in the end zone, are effective, because it is a bad matchup. They're usually, if they're a good, if it's a pretty good player out there, it's an athletic guy who's bigger and potentially stronger than whoever is on them. So they do have to tweak that, find a way. I think that's the key. But I agree, again, the McCaffrey touchdown was a backbreaker, because you got to make them earn it, right? I mean, the big plays,
right up the middle.
And it's tough. That's a fine line. You look at the film, you're like, well, that didn't have to look exactly like that. But when you don't allow teams to kind of have to work their way and grind down the field, it just seemed to kind of, I don't know that it necessarily deflated the team, because I think we all went in thinking, look, if that Baltimore game is a home game, they're winning that game.
Yeah.
So then you come home and you say, okay. And yet that seemed to be the play that really changed the complexion of the game.
And up until that point, the Cardinals had held them to almost, I think, it's like 70 yards rushing. So it wasn't like Christian McCaffrey was getting the touches, but it wasn't like he was going off as expected. But as soon as that happened, it kind of opened things up at that point.
Yeah, and I think even though Kyle Allen was having a good game to that point, you still want to make him beat you being a backup quarterback. And I agree with you. I think the rush defense has actually been a bigger strength this season than we thought. They've given up yards, but it's been to quarterbacks a lot of the time. So that one, just kind of a regular halfback dive play right up the middle to go for a 76-yarder. To me, that was the play of the game.
Let's talk about some bright spots, some sunny side up in this morning scramble. Obviously, we had the opportunity to see that opening drive and just Kyler use his legs. And that was exciting to me to see him get outside of the pocket, make defenders miss. I mean, what stood out to you, Kyle, first?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Kyler's legs, I think Chandler Jones had a big game. It was interesting the way Carolina played on defense, where they forced them to throw a lot of short passes, so there wasn't the deep shots as much. But I do think Kyler Murray did a good job of realizing that they're going to keep those safeties backs, and I should hit the check down guy. And they moved the ball pretty good through the first three quarters, knowing that this is their game plan and we're going to have to be patient. So I think he did a good job of realizing that. But you still need big plays in the NFL, and the fact that they didn't get the Christian Kirk deep catch, Trent Sherfield didn't have that catch, that stuff to me, I guess we're talking about bright spots, but those were the spots that weren't as bright.
It's hard to imagine 30 completions for Kyler Murray, and yet
not even
you kind of look at the only 173 yards, and the way that things did not go his way in the fourth quarter. And I think part of it was he was pressing. He tried to go downfield when all game long he had taken the short stuff. He kind of was running a little bit. I think that pressure kind of got to him.
And you're battling the clock at that point too, where you want to force it downfield.
So normally you'd be talking about 30 completions, especially in the completion rate, pretty good, 30 of 43. You'd normally be talking about a win, I think, and a pretty good performance. But all the guys did credit the Panther defense after the game and the plan that they had, and I think that was, that was part of the adjustment, and they adjusted in the second half. And once you get the lead, you can, quote, pin your ears back, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and I mean, surprisingly enough, and talking about like Kyler's completions and the yardage just don't really match up. It's similar to Christian Kirk. He had 10 catches, but I think it was only for 63, 64 yards. So it's wild to see the completions and attempts and the percentage without seeing like the yards and the touchdowns, I guess.
Well, still a lot of bright spots to look at. As you expect there's going to be growing pains. Just the third game together with Cliff and Kyler, the defense obviously with what they have to manage with, but there's still some bright spots here. So let's talk about the players who are our rise and shine players of the game. Jody, let's go with you first.
Well, I'm going to go with David Johnson. Love that play, kind of Kyler finding David for the touchdown. He also had 11, you're going to look at it here, 11 rushes, but 6 catches, so 17 touches. For David, I think he was targeted 9 times also, but here it is. Kyler finds him, and he's out there in some space and runs hard to the end zone. That was a huge moment in the game. And, at that point you're thinking, all right, David Johnson's going. This is another box you're checking that you wanted to see. He's a weapon. And I think this, even though it is a loss and even though it didn't continue in the fourth quarter, probably again, because you don't have the lead, it's harder to do that, harder to run the ball. But this was a very bright spot for David Johnson and a big moment for the team. I think they can build on it for next week and maybe even get him involved a little more in some different plays. That play was so interesting. I don't think it was by design. Yeah. It didn't look like it was, but it
bailed him out.
You love to see him punch it in and run hard. Also, just going off David Johnson, just seeing them give him the ball in third down situations and just push through the pile and get those first downs, something that stood out to me with the way that he was running yesterday.
He's definitely got that unique ability, and he showed it on that one play to juke a guy that's coming full steam at him and then to be the power back and bowl through 2 guys to score a touchdown. So all of his unique traits kind of in that one play, and a big play for the Cardinals.
I had some people tweeting, 2015, David Johnson, here he
looked like it, yeah.
All right, Zach, who you got?
I got my man Zane Jones. Zane Gonzalez.
Zane's not a bad pick.
Another great week, but I'm going with the easy one. Chandler Jones.
With the money sign. I
sign.
see that. Creativity.
So, I mean, he was all over the field last night or yesterday, and 2 sacks, both strip sacks. He got one back. I think that's Lisa brought up. It was 3 in the last 2 weeks, and all have been strip sacks.
Yes.
So he's just showing how dominant he is and kind of picking up where he's left off last year. So, definitely good to see, especially with the younger corners, having a great pass rush from the edge. And Chandler is, one of the most dominant guys I've seen.
He's become really good at slapping at that ball. Like, he doesn't just get sacks; he gets a lot of forced fumbles. He's realizing that the quarterback hasn't thrown it yet, and when that ball's out there, he goes for it. He does a good job.
All right, Kyle, who you got this week?
My handwriting is way worse than your guys'.
Is upside down?
Besides that,
You're
I'm
a
good.
journalist. You don't have good handwriting.
Christian Kirk.
Use it up there.
I know. I need some lessons.
Can you zoom in here, please?
Christian Kirk.
All right.
My first choice was Chan, but Zach can have that one. But Christian Kirk, like you said, 10 catches, 59 yards. Not a dominant game, but more than anything, he showed that he's a reliable number 1 receiver for this offense. Like, he can get open. Kyler Murray looks for him a lot, and I think it's just going to show what he's going to do this year, have a lot of catches, and the fact that he got over the top against a defense that was game planning to not let anybody get over the top, I think that was a really good sign. And he said after the game, I need to hold on to that ball. And he caught it, and then Trey Boston came in and hit him pretty good and knocked it out. So people on Twitter were saying that was a clear drop, but I think that was a pretty good play by Trey Boston too. So obviously if he catches that ball, you're talking about another 100-yard game for Christian Kirk. But I think overall he's made good strides this year, and he's a guy that I think has taken that next step and is going to be a very star player for the Cardinals for a lot of years.
And hopefully a star player on my fantasy team, just to add that in. All right, my guy is Hassan Reddick. I was going to go with Chandler Jones with the obvious, Zane Gonzalez, even punting yesterday.
Yeah.
But Hassan Reddick, 12 tackles, team high for the Cardinals, and he just looks like he's finally fitting in this defense. 3 years, 3 different coordinators, 3 different defenses to pick up. So he just finally feels comfortable. He had a pass breakup on McCaffrey. That was a beauty. That was my jam, watching that game, watching that play. So I'm going to choose him. I think he's finally just feeling into form.
And I think he
He's
played.
so athletic.
He is.
And if he gets
It's good to see him being
defense,
utilized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to come together for him.
Yeah.
I think he played every snap defensively too, so it's nice for him to be back to full health, playing there full time, because he can really do everything. He can play in coverage, he can blitz, he can stop the run because he's big enough. I agree, important piece.
All right, well, next up, the Seahawks come into town. Now, they took a loss yesterday against Teddy Bridgewater and the Saints. So another, they lost at home to a backup quarterback. So they're going to come in mad. We'll see. We'll see what happens here.
Another home game, though. You got to take advantage of these home games. Yes. And none of these are easy, but it should be a good one. Hopefully the fans will be pumped up.
I know. They have to be. A division game.
I think you look at Russell Wilson and what he is now, one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, and you see a lot of Kyler Murray traits or Russell Wilson traits in Kyler Murray. And I think, it's a Seahawk, and people don't like the Seahawks, but if you can get that type of quarterback leading your team, that's a big spot for the future. And Kyler Murray is trending in that direction, and things haven't gone great for the Cardinals yet, but I think having a good quarterback is so important, and already through three games, he's showing those Russell Wilson tendencies.
Start fast, finish strong. All right, guys.
I like it.
You like it?
That's
Is that our
plan.
slogan? Is that the game plan? All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Join us every single Monday morning on YouTube at 10 a.m. We'll see you next week.